Not me.
Here we go.
All right. Tonight, this is one of the biggest topics we've ever covered here. It's about what kind of culture should we be teaching the kids, world language kids that are learning world languages about these foreign countries and places. What is real culture? If we're to teach them, if our job is to teach them what's scientific and not what's just common usage and common colloquial use of terms, the word culture means, scientifically to anthropologists, the entire body of knowledge that dictates human behavior in a specific space. That means culture is the social behavior and norms found in human society. It's not just the unusual things. So culture is a bunch of things. Just to shed some light on this, here's where we sort of got to this. Here's a letter from Alejandra Munoz, one of our correspondents in Mexico. And she says that there's such a thing as real Mexico, or rather there's such a thing as fake Mexico, where Mexicantude has been scrubbed off, leaving only the colorful, nice, quote, aspects of Mexican culture. A few years ago, a friend of mine from the USA visited me, and I took her with me to eat in Guanajuato. We arrived later than expected, and I was starving, so we went to the closest restaurant to the hotel, a Vips. Vips is a restaurant chain very popular here in Mexico. It serves all kinds of food, but includes plenty of Mexican options. The clients are Mexican, the staff is Mexican. Yet my friend, when she didn't exactly complain, but asked me to take her next time to experience the real Mexico. Okay, I honestly don't see how Vips isn't real Mexico, considering I, a Mexico living in Mexico, eat there all the time, as do a ton of Mexicans in the country, but my friend didn't explain. She just wanted to eat like a real Mexican. And that's the thing. People have their own concept of what real Mexico is, and while they can often find exactly what they're looking for, there's also the very real possibility that the real Mexico will look like any other country in the world. Now, in anthropology, have a thing called real culture and ideal culture. The real culture is what really the people really do, their social norms. Ideal culture is what they say, they'll tell you they do, which is what, like if you go to some small town in America, they'll say, oh, our town is just like Norman Rockwell. That's their ideal culture. But the real culture is they've got as many juvenile delinquents there as the big city. And then there's the tourist culture, which is like landmarks. But that's not really culture either, according to the scientific way of looking at it. So my worry is that as an industry supplying world language teachers, we're supplying them stuff that is going to give the kids all this color, but it's really not preparing them for what they're going to see when they go to France or to Germany or Mexico. I mean, I know that some of our native-born German teachers wince when they see in our catalog another something with a pretzel or a beer stein or lederhosen on it. They just wince when they see that. And then I get fan mail, but unfan mail. And I mean, are we just promoting with some of the images we have of Mexico, for instance, or like France? We still sell berets, I think, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think there's anybody alive that still wears a beret since World War II or before. Yet that's somehow the cliche. And like for Mexico, are we just, the stuff that we're doing now, is it just is just the latest version of the guy under the cactus with a big sombrero on? Is that what we're guilty of? So the question is what is real, let's Mexico, because I know most about that. Sonia's here. And I don't know, should we introduce ourselves again?
Sure.
We've done this before. Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, Sonia Estrada. I'm from Chihuahua, Mexico. And I've been a professor for some years, working in tourism too.
Okay. I'm Skip, and I don't know what I do here. I change the light bulbs and start these meetings.
I'm Heather. I'm the director of our ELA division, but I was an educator in public education for 25 years.
I'm Steve. I work with world language and marketing.
And I'm Beth. I'm a product development manager in world language and a 22-year veteran teacher.
Okay, so I mean, what kind of things should we be providing the teachers with and encouraging them to show the kids? I think it's important that when the kids show up, that they've studied Spanish for 4 years, they show up in any big city in Mexico, and they can drive across it and not see all this colorful stuff. They're going to see, all kinds of things, but it's not going to be all this colorful stuff that we're always talking about. It's going to be a modern city, except,
Right.
there are 80 cities in Mexico that are designated as magic cities. And they're places with red tile roofs and all the stuff that you see in the postcards. But those are very special places. That's not the norm for Mexico right now. The norm for Mexico is big modern cities with Burger Kings and Pizza Huts and
But as a teacher, can you really show or explain? You can tell the kids all about the similarities. The banks are similar, the grocery stores are similar, but that only goes so far. Don't you have to find the differences and focus on those between the United States and Mexico, or the United States and France? And
yeah, but if they go there, if you just tell them about the differences and the colorful tourist, sightseeing stuff, then they're going to go there and they're going to go, well, where's Mexico? Like this woman that she mentions here. She said, my friend came and she said she wanted to see the real Mexico. She said it twice. Caroline, do you have those pictures of what she sent along with this letter?
Yeah, I had them rolling through again.
Oh, they were rolling through. We already saw them.
Yeah, we can pop them up again.
That's okay. But to her, she says, look, Mexico's traffic jams. It's bank tellers and modern-looking banks, and that's what we deal with all the time. And the guys who hang from their feet with colorful ribbons all over themselves on this giant pole and go around and around and around until it comes down and stuff like that. That's in one little town, in one little place, one little season. That's not the norm of Mexican culture. Mexican culture is, well, tell us.
are there teachers on there?
I can.
Maybe they can speak up and say what they want.
Or what are you finding? Like, what holes do they have?
Watching on YouTube, and I think 4 or 5 on Facebook.
Go ahead.
There is urban Mexico and there is rural Mexico.
Okay.
When you go to big cities, you expect pretty much what you see in many big cities in the world.
Restaurant. Well, makes
but
sense.
when you go to urban, urban world is
Universal.
universal. But when you go to rural cities have all these unique people. Probably have a small supermarket or small grocery store, but they mostly go to markets. They call them tianguis. So it's they go and get their groceries and their fruits and vegetables and their meats and everything at the mercado. They don't necessarily go to Walmart or all the big chains that you have here, as well as in Mexico, as well as in all over the world.
Okay, but in like a big city like Chihuahua, you say that the people of certain socioeconomic level will go to the market. It's an indoor market, but it's got all these little stands of selling fruit and stuff like that. But the people who have the money go to the supermarket chains and the malls, right?
I would say 80% of the population of 1 million in the city of Chihuahua, which I'm from, I think they go to mercados and they get everything from the mercado.
But they're not outdoor markets
because
with
it's
tarps.
cheaper.
They're like it's an indoor big market.
Some are big. They call Mercado de Abastos, which means it's where all the produce from the area and from down south come, and there are sales. They sell them, they offer them there, and they're a lot cheaper than going into a nice looking, fresh,
Walmart.
clean supermarket,
Right.
Walmart.
Okay.
It's the same
But
with
it's
the
probably
but
fresher
isn't-
and
same with the
tastier and yeah.
But isn't the supermarket, what's your friend that owns the supermarket chain? What's it called?
Maris, Leopoldo Maris.
What's his chain called?
Al Super.
Al Super. Well, isn't the Al Super chain just as much part of culture there as the tianguis? Is it valid culture?
Yeah, it's there for the ones who can afford it.
Who can afford it? Okay.
Okay. All right. So
Which actually changes what culture it is you're looking at, because when you go with a socioeconomic difference, people will associate with that culture as opposed to the lower income is a culture, just like we as people can identify with more than one culture. I can identify with the culture of educators. I can identify with the culture of parents. So I can identify with the dance culture because I'm a Latin dancer, So
you are?
Yeah.
You're a salsa dancer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you are are trying to pinpoint culture, it's a lot of individuality within culture. It's how you personally identify, and then the group that you become a part of. And that's how your culture is formed.
But the anthropological definition of culture is norms that are held pretty much in common by a certain group. I mean, you could say piñatas is real Mexican culture because they're done everywhere by everybody. It's
Yes.
it's a universal thing.
Yes.
The guys dangling from some of the most colorful things that you see on the postcards and the tourist pictures are just exceedingly colorful, but they're only done in one little area at one little time. I mean, Day of the Dead is all over. That's
Why
all
do
over
they?
Mexico.
Why are they doing that? Why are those men climbing that pole and falling down as they spin?
Their reason has nothing that's shared by the other people in other parts of the country.
Right. So that's a historical component of past culture.
Yeah, but
and so
that's history.
Yes. Right. Exactly. So what that's doing is that's showing the tourists, if you want to call it for lack of a better term, our tourist culture, history. And as an educator in a classroom, that's what's going to grab the attention of our students is,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah, but you can do the wow stuff, but it's not really what anthropologists define as culture.
But we're not
Culture-
teaching anthropology, we're teaching...
No, we're teaching science. We're supposed to teach them not just the common use of something. The common use of the word is it's a word that's been misused and thrown all over and got really loose. If you use the proper definition, it's a norm that's all over. I mean, there are, for instance, we can say McDonald's is a norm in Mexico. That is a cultural norm. Fast food, it's all over the place. But if you want to study the culture, we could get into how McDonald's is different, because it's McDonald's, but it is different. You walk in there, or a pizza place, let's say Pizza Hut or whatever. You go into a Pizza Hut, and you're going to have a different interaction with the people. You're going to get chorizo pizza with real fresh jalapenos on it, and it's different. Or McDonald's. When we went to McDonald's, they went and they said, okay, and instead of handing the food, they said, well, you know, you just go over and sit at a table, and a waiter brings it to you, and you tip them. You know, it's a whole different. It's more, you know, personalized. I mean, you look at a cultural norm would be, for instance, in Mexico, you've got people, a professional that is a successful 35-year-old attorney, probably is going to still live with his parents if he's not married. That's something you don't see here. There's a difference, you know, and they don't have like blocks of apartment buildings with people all over the place. There's things that look the same, you know, but they're not if you look into it. And those might interest the kids even more. The things that look like ours, like us, but aren't.
And that's what we need to, and we can have teachers, if you're out there, log in and send us messages. We have Caroline over here kind of watching.
She's moderating the chat window.
Yeah.
Is anybody ringing in?
Audrey said that the rural versus urban could be an interesting dynamic to discuss.
I also wonder if we're talking about all these different things. Maybe we're just not well-rounded enough
Well,
when we develop products. Maybe we're looking. You know what I'm saying?
I think I'm going to say this, and maybe I'll tick some teachers off, but we're supposed to be frank in these meetings, right? I think that so many teachers studied Spanish for a few years in college and high school, and they liked it, and they spent a summer in Spain or Mexico, and then they came back and became teachers. And I think in a summer, you're still going to be, your connection with these places is going to still be on the romantic level. I mean, I'm not accusing anybody, because that's my connection with Mexico was very romantic. I went there and was just fascinated by the color. And then I'd always seek out the old parts of town, the country towns, the little towns, the woods, and I'd find those places. That's what I liked. But I've started to realize over the years that, you know, just because I love that stuff and gravitate toward it, that isn't necessarily what Mexico is. Mexico is a dynamic, modern country. I mean, they have, their aerospace industry is huge there. That's part of their culture. And like in France now, you know, I talked to somebody from France the other day, and he says, don't you realize we have some of the fastest trains in the world in France? We're proud of that stuff. That's our culture. We're cool people. We're not just a bunch of old guys carrying French bread under our arm and a bottle of wine in the other hand and a stupid beret and funky old felt shoes. You know, it's not us anymore. Maybe it was, but it's not.
I know you've traveled a lot through different Spanish-speaking countries, but is that what's norm with your old colleagues when you knew different teachers that taught foreign language, their exposure to learning the language in other countries?
Well, their exposure to learning languages?
Yeah, I'm
And
just
their
curious.
experience, their experience.
Well,
Is it like what Skip's talking about, kind of that?
Romantic side.
level, yeah.
maybe in the beginning, but once you get ingrained in the everyday rhythm, that's what it is, but around here you're not going to walk down 3 blocks and buy a cuarto kilo de tortillas and have them fresh off the, like you would
Right.
down in Cuernavaca or someplace like that. But what we need to also think about is the curriculum that's being driven by either the administration or the school district or the
Whatever
state
standards
or whatever the standards
they're
are, and that our hands are tied as educators in a classroom as to what it is we're going to focus on.
But they
teaching.
say teach culture. I don't think Actville talks about what culture is even. They just say teach culture. Okay, is culture all the colorful touristy stuff, or is it what really goes on there? I mean, really what's happening? I mean, it's not, it's like in the United States. What's American culture? What can you say is American culture? I say the only thing you can say, the cultural norm of America right now, the United States of America, one of the first norms I can think of is fast food, sporting events, and celebrities. That's about it. You can say cowboys are American culture. No, they're not. They're a part of they're a regional culture. They're a certain region. That's where cowboys, you find the cowboys. You don't find them all over. You can say square dancing. Oh, square dancing. If we're going to make posters of the United States culture, we put square dancing up there. Well, yeah, there's square dancing clubs all over the place, but that's not really a norm of American culture.
And that's the thing, like when we had our live chat last week with
The classroom.
The classroom, the students were telling us they wanted to know and be exposed to what they consider real, not the touristy type of things, but the majority of when we were talking about locations and shopping experiences and what students their age do, they wanted to know kind of what was real. Now, of course, we were thinking, well, probably chances are what's real is probably very typical to what they experience.
Where do teenagers hang out? Do they hang out at the tianguis?
Pardon me?
The teenagers in Chihuahua hang out at the tianguis? Or do they hang out at the mall?
No, they do. It depends only on their economic level.
It just depends by
So
economics.
both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Which
it's
is
the same
similar.
thing
They
as
go to the
here,
market,
you know,
yeah.
But
is socioeconomic differences are going to spearhead the culture that you gravitate towards.
Okay, I guess so. Okay, so but in the tianguis that you see in Chiapas, for instance, which is canvases out, the ladies with their stuff on the ground and stuff like that out on the cobblestones, that's not the tianguis that you see in Chihuahua.
No, it's different because we
It's
are.
more usually in buildings and stuff.
Because the weather has a lot of thing to do.
So you have
We are in extreme
your climate.
cold or extreme heat, and the south is more generous.
So what do the teenagers do? What did typical did you have any teenage kids?
No.
Yes, you did.
What did they do? Where'd they hang out? What did they do? What place? Where'd they go to eat?
They go to McDonald's. They go to Burger King. They go to, they also have gorditas and they also have burritos
Where?
and tostadas at the mall.
At the mall. At the mall.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
The big mall has everything
Just like
From-
ours here.
Yeah.
in the
from
United States.
tostadas to burritos to all the
Like
vitamin T. We call them vitamin T, which means tacos, tortas, tostadas.
Tamales.
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 That's vitamin T.
I love
I
it.
like that.
That's awesome.
Vitamin T.
That's a bulletin board. So
I was gonna say, I love it. Your vitamin T's.
Vitamina T.
Vitamina T.
But you said
Tamales,
so
tacos, tostadas, tortas.
so would you say your kids were raised up in the upper socioeconomic level?
Like middle class, upper
Middle.
upper middle class.
Okay. All right.
But now my grandkids are much better. So they are used to experiencing the things in all America. But then they also love to go to see the markets because some in our background is still like pulling us to go and smell the real thing, the real mangoes, because you can get the mango sliced and all with chile and whatever, how we try it. But then you go and smell on the boxes where they bring the produce from way south. Of course, we only produce apples and peaches, and most of the produce come from southern Mexico. But we still love to go and see it.
It's like here, it's like Americans, I grew up near Niagara Falls. So for me, it's no big deal to go to Niagara Falls. But if somebody comes to to visit, I take them there. But then I go to New York City to visit a friend who's lived there for 35 years, and I said, I'd like to go see the Statue of Liberty. And she says, well, I've never been. Let's go.
Oh, there you are.
Right? So it's the same thing. A market is still a novelty, even amongst natives.
You could say that Disneyland is American culture because everybody's either heard of it, half the people have been there.
Commercial,
Yeah, every people have been there. And the people that haven't been there, they've seen it on TV, they've heard of it, you allude to it in conversations, and so it's part of American culture because it's a norm. It's pretty much across the board. I'm not particularly into celebrities or who or what revealing what on the red carpet, but I'm certainly aware of it, and it's in my face every day, so it's part of America, part of my culture. Even though I don't like it, but it's there.
Now, like for Day of the Dead in Mexico, El Día de los Muertos, all the youngsters, and I'm telling you from kindergarten up to college, they make up as Catrinas. Catrinas created by this man from Posada, I think it's from Aguascalientes. So they do makeup and dress up like Catrinas. That's a big thing in even from high school, from kindergarten up to college.
Is Halloween part of Mexican culture now?
It is, yes, in the northern part of Mexico, yes.
It's not all the way through the country, so it's not, you can't
No,
say it's
it's
Mexican.
just only in
just
the
in the
northern
north.
part.
Audrey says that she would teach Day of the Dead and basic holidays and would focus on the historical roots and how their influence is seen nowadays. And then she'd also touch on some of the, like the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Incans, but she also said that might be a little bit too repeated today.
I love the pre-Columbian stuff.
It's cool, but that's history.
That's my
Yeah.
When you're
favorite.
teaching, and if Axel says we should teach history, that's history, but this is, we're talking about culture right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, she was
it's
talking about how she tries to pull the historic and how it touches on modern day culture. So how today they Day of the Dead and the history of it and how they're celebrating that today in modern day culture.
Well, that works if you talked about the origins, I guess.
I think that also like the big folkloric dance companies that are in Mexico, Guadalajara, and all those big cities, I think they're not only for tourists. They're for everybody. I mean, we as a family go and see them whenever they come to town because, they're colorful, but it takes a lot.
What percentage of people see those things?
As much as
They can afford to buy the ticket.
Yeah.
It's not just for well-off people?
Oh, no.
Like, for instance, I don't think you can say that the symphony is part of the culture, is the culture of America. You say it's part of our culture of America, but pretty much the symphony is highly educated, well-off people or well-off people.
Not anymore because
Not in Mexico?
Not anymore because there have been some programs in public schools that have been teaching violin and cello and all these classical instruments. And now in every school, no matter how poor it is, they have at least violins.
So it sounds like you're talking when you talk culture, the importance put upon the fine arts and education. But that's becoming a little bit more of a norm of what they're trying to do.
Didn't I hear you say that they're more musical there than we are here?
Oh yeah.
I think
In
they
Cuba,
have
too.
an excellent ear for music. The children are learning how to read music since they start elementary.
Yeah.
And they are
all of them, or just special classes?
No, it's in
part of what
every.
they
It's the same thing in Cuba.
in every
Right now.
public
There we go.
school,
I didn't know that.
because
Yes.
it is known now that
All
when
over the
Like
country.
the connection
All
between
over the
school
country.
success and
it is known
music.
now that the two hemispheres of your brain, when you
Mhm.
are executing an instrument, not only hearing, when you hear music and appreciate music, it's only one half of the brain that is working. But now they've understood and found out that
brain
there-
research.
the two hemispheres of your brain work when you are executing, and it's been bringing a lot of success in all these math classes.
Yes.
After a kid learns how to read music.
Okay, so that's a cultural difference. What other what's the real
Yeah.
culture in Mexico? Now you can say
Like
their families are
ignorance
stronger
here.
and tighter. They stay straighter. They've got the kids. There's a more musical culture. You could make these generalities about it. There's Day of the Dead and piñatas.
Oh yeah.
That's universal. What else is there? What would it, if when the kid has taken 4 years of Spanish and he gets off the plane and he drives through the city, any big city in Mexico, Hermosillo, for instance, and he drives through there, what's he going to see that's the same or looks the same, that's different or looks the same as the U.S. but is different if you scratch the surface?
So are you talking like transportation? The fact
No,
that
just the fact what he's going to see out of the windows
well,
of the car. when he
I'm
drives through.
thinking when you go to some of these cities in the United States, so often we have cars. Everyone
Yeah.
has cars, and so you have a bunch of traffic with cars.
Yeah,
But you go to other countries,
It's more buses.
you have buses and you have
That's true. That's
mass
different.
transit that's much more developed than
That's different.
we do in the United
There's a
States.
difference right there. They have, like, go to Mexico City, it's like, there's more buses than cars, for God's sake.
And public transportation in big cities
Yeah.
has become very
Tons
important.
of it.
And it's much
Always
more
was.
developed than it is in a lot of our large.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a
It's
cultural
more,
norm.
more important.
I guess my question too is it out of being being concerned about the environment, or is that a necessity because of the
always
population?
Well, I know in Mexico City, at one point, I don't know if it's still the case, depending on your placa, you would have to, you could only drive like on Monday, Wednesday, Friday,
Yeah.
because if you had
Yeah,
odd or
still
even
that way.
number.
Okay.
Hoy no circula is the name of the program. Hoy no circula, meaning that
Okay, that's a
It
culture.
depends.
That's a
And
difference.
buses are everywhere, and it's always been that way.
depending
Yeah.
on the
Because people
last
couldn't afford
digits on
cars.
your license
Mhm.
plate, then you can do or do not
Yes.
See,
drive
that's
Hoy
the
no
difference.
circula.
vehicle that day. Hoy no circula.
So why? So if
To
Smog.
prevent
Smog.
pollution.
Traffic jams.
Traffic.
so people carpool
No, buses.
buses.
And subway.
Or the
Buses
metro.
Or get together with
And tell them how the
neighbors.
metro is different in Mexico.
Oh, the metro has a section for males and for females. The cars are not mixed.
Really?
So I mean, you could say, see, I think
In
that's.
that,
I
in
think. See, I
Mexico
think.
City?
I think that's the
Did I pay?
opportunity, you guys. The opportunity is to look at all this
Ciudad de
stuff.
Mexico now.
CDMX ahora sí. Yo sé.
See, Molly is saying, she's saying, look, she's saying that the real Mexico, very possibly, real Mexico will look like any other country in the world. Okay, it does. If we're going to
Visibly, it might look.
visibly,
it might
and then you
look similar,
scratch the surface. Okay, the subway looks like the subway, but dig into it a little. There's boy cars and girl cars, or you go to McDonald's, looks like McDonald's, but wait a minute, you can get chorizo in McDonald's, and I think that's what's deep and interesting.
Audrey, she made a point saying that it's very hard to keep on what is authentic and real culture unless you get to take that time to spend and experience that culture. She says for her, like, she hasn't traveled to some of these areas in over 3 years, and it's been 10 years since she lived in any of them. And then she said it's kind of hard to know what the true culture is unless you get to spend time living in that culture. And then she said
And
even
it's
here it's hard
constantly changing.
to keep up what's cool. Like in America, we as adults it's hard for us to keep up what's cool with the kids, and so it makes it even more of a challenge to understand what's cool with kids living in South America or Mexico.
So that's part of what we need
We
to be
need to
looking.
do, yeah,
we need to do
keep
for
'em up on
teachers,
it.
because the reality is they can't
Yeah,
do that
okay.
type of
That's
travel.
Cool.
But I mean, what other things can you think of? Like you go into a bank, and what's different about a bank there and a bank here? There's a teller windows, they look just like the windows here. But then what?
Yeah.
How are they different?
So
Right, this is
what
it.
you're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong, is more modern culture, like pop culture, what's happening
Current.
Yeah,
today,
yeah, yeah.
current,
Not,
now.
We're not looking for tourist site. It's not a sightseeing
Current life.
trip. Yeah, current life instead of a sightseeing trip. The sightseeing trips, I don't know that, I mean, maybe there's a place for that, but I don't think we can call it culture. I mean, we still need those posters, the Eiffel Tower and all that stuff. That's great, because that's part of the romance of it. Fine, let's pander to the romance aspect. That's fine. But we can't say that that's really culture. We need to prepare the kids for this dynamic, fascinating, deep, real thing that goes beyond just the tourist
Are there any
sites.
other teachers on there? No.
The thing here in Mexico now is that they're in the big cities now. They are preserving and doing some restoration on the what we call the historical district or el centro histórico. There are so many rules for protecting the buildings as well as all the outside.
Because that stuff's getting rare.
Yeah. But we found out lately that when people goes, they go to see the downtown district, like the historic district. But then to dine and to enjoy a best hotel and to enjoy nightlife and all that, they go to the let's say tourist districts. But there's not such a thing. It's like where the youngsters hang out in town, in a city like Chihuahua. In downtown, they have places where they sell traditional drinks and traditional food. But then you go just outside of the central district. You go out to the like more
Trendy.
Like the
trendy
news center
district,
type of.
and then you can get, you name it, any type, any kind of food that you want, any drink that you want is just there available for the visitors as well as for the locals. And the locals do both.
But I mean, I don't know. But there's stuff that you think of as Mexican handicrafts. You know, a lot of Mexican handicrafts that they sell both here as Mexican handicrafts and Mexico are not made. They're made in China now.
Yeah, I know they were very good copying, but
Yeah,
they're still.
Like for instance, we were importing little maracas keychains from Mexico for a long time, and now the ones that we sell in the catalog is Mexican, like little incentives to give to the kids. They're from, I shouldn't let on here, but
And
they're from China.
It
Well,
has
it's not from
becoming
Mexico.
so rare and so well appreciated that per se, to get a real blouse from a lady that did it all in
Her loom
the
and-
old ways,
Yeah.
it can cost you up to $1,000 for a blouse, and not many
No, not many
people can afford it.
Right.
So,
But
what's-
those things are highly appreciated, and people in the big cities, in the big urban centers that dress up with traditional clothing, they have to be rich to be wearing that
Okay,
type
but wait a
of
second.
clothing.
Tell me the difference between Al Super, which is a modern-looking supermarket in Mexico. What's the difference between that place, if I were to walk in there, and Kroger's?
Not a difference.
Nothing? It'd be
Because
the same?
Yeah, because you can get.
There won't be different foods?
Oh,
No,
yeah.
regional.
Oh yeah, of course. of
Well, it's
course.
like if you go down to La Colmena or something in
Yeah.
Detroit, down
Well,
in
but-
Southwest.
No, El Super's like a big Kroger's down there. It's a big
But
Oh,
the
yeah, they
Walmarts
have
are probably
E&L
pretty
as
close to the
And
same.
it's in
E&L,
Kroger's, depending
yeah.
on, because they go by different names all around the United States. They carry
Well, Kroger's
regional.
is all over the U.S.
Yeah, but they go by
I
different
don't
names.
think so.
Yeah, they're all over the
South.
United
Yeah.
States, but they go
Yeah.
by
Not
different
in
names.
the South, and we don't have it in El Paso.
Well, what do you
Texas.
call it? What Publix down south or whatever. That,
Oh, okay.
But
So you have King
the
Soopers,
products
Kroger.
is
or Albertsons or whatever.
it's like here,
good.
like in Mexico, we
Publix.
use a lot of fresh produce to prepare our
Yeah.
meals, and here, because of the weather and all that, you use a lot of canned food. So they're stuck with different stuff that is
But that's a good
So
thing.
your aisles are going to have your bigger aisles of canned foods here, and you'll have a bigger produce section down there.
Will
Yeah.
there be a snack bar inside where you can get served food?
Yes, sir.
You don't have that in Kroger's.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
The deli. But I mean with tables and stuff. You sit
But
down
like
and
at
they make you
Wegmans,
food?
but at Wegmans they do,
Okay.
in
So that's not different.
East Coast,
Is
so
there
that's
a
not-
difference in the
Now-
service or how they?
Now they have even a gourmet corner where is a chef with his big hat and all
That's
dressed
in
up
Mexico.
uniform in Chihuahua City.
But not in
Al
Kroger's.
Super.
Okay, so they've got more of a, there's more of a gourmet
Speciality
atmosphere,
gourmet
and they got a chef who'll
But
cook
if
you up
you
stuff?
go to Wegmans, which is a
Yeah,
chain,
we got that too, though. It's
there's
just not
sushi.
grocery.
yeah.
Well, you got the.
No, I
Or
don't mean
you
the
go
deli.
to Whole Foods
No, I
and they
know.
have that.
Where you can sit down and eat, and
Really?
Yeah,
Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Whole Foods has
I
several
mean, in Whole
chefs.
Foods, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So they are pretty much,
Similar.
people in Mexico are being aware of what it has success in the U.S.
Mhm.
and they just
Are the banks
introduce
different?
it to it. Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Well, you don't need to have a social security to open an account. You do here.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Are hospitals different?
very much,
Really? How
Tell me how
so?
they're different.
very much.
They look the same. They're big old fancy
yeah, they
white
look
buildings.
the same. But you know what? The nurses and the doctors, they're so different, so down to earth. They don't think of themselves as much as out of space people. They're pretty human,
Why?
kind.
Are they rich
Their
like here?
their bedside manner is.
Yeah, they are pretty rich.
More humble.
Yes, of course.
Are they?
Richard, yeah, they make pretty good money, but they do have, the system in Mexico has the social security, which is entitled to everyone that works for minimum wages, and then the private practice.
How much is it?
But then-
how much is Social Security?
How much is
How much
it?
do you pay?
Nothing. If you're
It's free.
minimum wages, it's free. Same as housing. It's for free too. I mean, the minimum wages doesn't pay, but then you get access to buy a house
Mhm.
without down payment, and you pay very little in all the rest of your life. But you have a house and you have medical care. It's kind of
that's
socialist
different.
Yeah.
program.
And so why
But
does
then
why do the hospitals? What
the
would be different in your
hospitals-
experience in a hospital? other
okay.
than the hospitals, doctors, nurses, more down to earth.
Doctors work in high-end hospitals, which are certified by some World Commission, and then the Seguro Social.
The same doctors.
Same doctors work in both places. Why? Because they
volunteer
have
work?
no, because they have very good
Benefits.
benefits
If
Do
they're at the other, not the private.
at the
Okay.
in the public.
So
Yeah.
they work where the morning one place, afternoon the other place.
Yeah, they take half and half. And the same doctor that is going to be performing a high-end surgery in a high-end hospital is going to be doing that, and it's going to take longer because it's kind of crowded in the public,
Mhm.
and it's going to take longer because it's more people
Okay.
doing that. But then in the other, in the private, you're just going to have to pay an arm and a leg for the Mexican income, of course,
Okay.
not for the American income.
So
For the American
interesting.
income, it's very inexpensive. Even the private high-end hospitals,
Are still
very inexpensive for
Wow.
an American income.
Okay, so what would be the different experiences that a person, let's say a young person here, goes to Mexico and goes from driving from the airport to where he's going to stay on the other side of town. He's going to go all the way through a good-sized city of 1 million people. What is he going to see that's different from here?
The downtown district and the family he's going to be staying at with.
The family will be
Because
different.
youngsters mostly stay with families. And we have lots of rules with youngsters.
Like what?
Well, they have to be respectful.
Disciplina, see.
Okay, maybe this is ideal culture. I mean, this is Norman Rockwell stuff. What really happens? They don't have juvenile delinquency?
Of course, like all over the world, but in well-educated families, youngsters turn
know,
out
but
really
Let
well.
me
How many
chime
people are
in.
well
When I
educated?
taught heritage speaker Spanish, and those students had more respect for that teacher in the classroom than the American students did, because they understood the value of their education, and their parents, whatever their story was that brought them here, knew the value of education. And if you were disrespected by the student, that mama brought that student in by his ear and made sure that he apologized, as opposed to our, if you want to, for lack of a better term, American culture, kids growing up here that
It's more common that they're not disciplined.
correct.
But really, the appreciation in rural communities, the appreciation of the high-end people would be the priest, because most of the people is Catholic, and then the doctor and the school teacher. That would be
The priest, the doctor, and school teacher, that's the hierarchy out in the country.
Oh yeah.
What about in town? Who's the big shot?
Oh yeah. In town, they
In
have
cities too?
not. I mean, there is a bishop, and there are more high
But
end.
the guys up in the Catholic
Clergy
Church,
first,
clergy
then
first?
doctor, then
That's prestige
yeah.
in society.
Doctors and doctors still go and visit you
Where do
in your
professors
house.
fit?
And professors or school teachers.
They're teachers.
Okay.
Well, wasn't it that way 30 years ago here, 50 years ago here?
yes.
So could it just be
They haven't,
dwindling away?
they haven't found our errors yet? They haven't copied
don't
our
know.
errors yet?
Well, we really appreciate the in Mexico the advantage of education, because we come from a you have like 200 years of ahead of us on before your independence.
What
You
time's
were
it
in
gonna be?
1776
Half an hour?
and we
Right.
only started out in 1810, 18 something. So it is like, I would say that you are ahead like 200 years.
Because we're
a
older.
lot,
Yeah.
I think. And
Interesting.
and there is a lot of, I don't know if it's correct to say it here, but the way you disrespect each other, like in the political campaigns, you don't propose.
What are you talking about?
You don't propose. You just say he's so and so and so bad, but it doesn't say I want to.
They don't do that in
this is my
Mexico?
proposal." No.
It's all positive ads as opposed to
You're giving your own platform as opposed to
It's-
bad mouthing
they
the
don't-
other guy.
interesting.
You have to be propositive. You have to propose and say what you are going to do.
Right.
All you have to get approved before.
It depends. It depends on what you're
But
going to
Sonia,
No,
do.
what
They
she's
shot
saying is
Colosio.
It's just
Yeah.
positive.
speak your platform. Don't
One
bash
guy
the
they
other
didn't
guy.
like, they shot.
Yeah. There's a lot of good things to rescue in the Mexican culture.
Mhm.
There's a lot of good things as well as
Okay.
some cancers, of
Well,
course.
where I've gotten to from this is, I don't know what you guys conclude. I'm concluding that there are probably some things that are sightseeing type things. That's fine. We can still provide the sightseeing sets of posters and bulletin board sets and stuff, and that's cool. That's the romantic stuff. But when we're talking about culture, we should probably look at culture that kind of things that the kids will see. And if it happens to be the same, which it does in a lot of cases, at least on the surface of it, we should dig in and show the compare and contrast. Okay, McDonald's is part of Mexican culture, but what's the difference in McDonald's? And dig into it far. And who was saying today, even if the kids are, you're saying about research, that the kids are all about research,
Yeah.
then why don't we do some things where the kids, or where you challenge the kids
They
to say,
figure it out.
McDonald's looks like the same, but is it really? Can you find out what the difference
Because
is?
they know how to Google, they know how to research.
Maybe they could just find in the menu. They found out the menu's different, and then they could, because the compare and contrast thing is big in education now, right?
Right.
Teaches kids to think.
And see, some of the stuff that we were talking about, I think and a lot of it sounds like it's connected to that history component.
Yes.
And the appreciation for the history of what made the country what it is, the different groups. Like I think one of the teachers, Audrey, I think it was talking about the different
The Mayan
groups that,
Aztecs,
yeah,
the
Yeah,
native.
but that's more history than
exactly.
culture.
That's something. So it's like
History we
we
should-
have to make sure that we're labeling things correctly.
What does
But
Axel say about Axel says teach
helps
history too, right?
form
Yes.
or form the culture.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do any good?
I learned some things. Yes.
Yeah.
But really, the traditions that we inherit from our ancestors, we are a country of mixture, because not in the north, because in the north we have Spaniards that came and worked on the haciendas, and they were patient and they were ready to work the land and make some out of it. And working the land and raising cattle it takes a different type of people than miners, because most of the cities in the northern part of Mexico were founded for a lot of rich silver mines. But in the center and the south of Mexico, where the weather is milder and where it was heavily populated by natives, by Aztecs and Olmecas and Mayans, in that It was a mestizaje, what we call the mixture of many of the Hispanic people came single and they marry in there.
Okay.
So there is a lot of mixture of like the religion, they came with Catholicism, but the native kept their own religion up to these days.
That's another
So
cultural
it's-
thing. How much can we get away with discussing religion in a public school?
If you do it,
Well, you connect it to the cultural or historical aspect, then you're
that's the way
generally
to
pretty
do
safe.
it. Yeah,
get
as
away
long
with
as
it.
you're not preaching it,
Well, yeah, I
Right.
know.
you're. I mean, I'm able to teach about the posadas and whatnot, or La Semana Santa and how in Guatemala they do their alfombras de acerín. But I'm not Catholic.
Yeah.
Yet I can teach that history or that cultural component of their, I call them, it's societal ADLs, society's daily activities of daily living, it's what they.
And most of the lives in rural communities go around the religion.
I was saying.
But as far as culture goes, I mean, guys on horses and burros isn't really the culture of Mexico anymore. It's there,
Unfortunately, yeah.
but it's not. But
Because
it's not really
no.
universal culture. You find it.
There is a great tradition that is named charreria, which means charreria means the art of handling a horse
Yeah.
and riding with proper attire.
Those are the rich guys, like rich guys on motorcycles.
Yeah, they need to have
Dressage.
lots,
Pretty much,
and
yeah.
lots and lots of money to
Yeah.
keep a horse. That type of horses, we call them high school horses. And I mean, a charro suit can cost up to 50,000 pesos.
But it's not. So that's part of that culture.
So, but we are trying to preserve
said
that.
To
we-
preserve
do you think
it,
we got
yeah.
anywhere with
So
I think so.
Okay.
I
Good.
think we picked up a few things, yeah.
Let's dig a little deeper then. And skeptically. So where are we going? But the trick is that because there's some of us here have had experience with Mexico and Spanish and so on, we're always deeper there, and we're sort of light in French and
Right,
German.
right.
It's really German sort of.
Well, we probably have to talk to some experts.
Yeah. I
And
guess.
I'm
Say.
pretty sure that you bring people from Poland
Right.
or from Germany. Or
Could you
they would-
pretend to be a
they
Frenchman
would-
or something?
They would really enhance their culture and their heritage.
We tried with Petra. She's probably listening right now. Petra, we keep asking you, and you just kept telling us that what we're doing is stupid. But what should we do? How about telling us what we should do? Petra is a Spanish or a
And
German
Mexico
teacher.
advertises touristically as over 1,000 places, 1,000 countries within one. Because there's so many cultures and so many traditions and so many things to be preserved and to be.
And so what that you're spiraling back to the fact that history is what helps form culture.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Thank you for coming.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah,
you.
we'll put this up on YouTube for you, right?
Right, so you can watch it whenever.
Yeah.